Hey, welcome to another episode of the Not Scrum Done podcast. I'm your co host, Adriana Marshall, and that's my amazing co host.
Grand Scrum Master Scott. Greetings, everyone.
Today, we're going to be talking about different techniques to run a daily scrum and also how, as a scrum master, you can help your team if they're struggling to run their daily scrum or they need some improvements. So, whether you're new to Agile or looking to refine your process, this video will guide you through the purpose, some of the different techniques, and also how you can help your scrum team. All right, so the first thing, what is the daily scrum? It's a 15-minute time box event for the developers to plan for the next 24 hours. The event is designed to be quick, efficient, on progress toward the sprint goal. All right, so Scott, you want to talk a little bit more about the purpose of the daily scrum?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's an opportunity for us to track our progress towards the sprint goal where we're looking at empiricism. We're using the sprint backlog to make things transparent. And we're going to talk about that during that 15-minute cycle, what we've done the last 24 hours. We're going to use empiricism. The sprint backlog is going to make things transparent. The event itself, daily scrum, is the inspection point. And then in that 15 minutes, we're going to look at the sprint backlog and see if we need to adapt it in such a way so that when we leave the daily scrum into the next daily scrum, we feel like we're going the best course to obtain our sprint goal. And who owns this event? This event is for the developers. Scrum Guide says this event is for the developers by the developers. This is an opportunity for them to talk about what they need to talk about since they are the people doing the work. The Scrum Guide also highlights if the Scrum Master and the product owner are there, why are they there? If they're there, they participate as developers. Now, there's a caveat to that. If you read the Scrum Guide for the first time, that if you just start a new team, maybe you're a scrum master, you might be there in a facilitating role, helping the team understand what this event is about. Just like Andriana's going through you now, we're going to be teaching about daily scrum. So we will be there initially to teach and train them what this event is all about. Andriana.
Yeah, and I think one of the first things you should do is have some sort of visual, whether that's physical or digital. This is from Mural, and I will link this in the description so you can have this template. First part is doing a check in. This is completely optional. Now, I would consider a lot of fun. I would do things like this with a new team, not necessarily a team that's been together a year or 2 years, or maybe you've never done it and you want to shake things up and it'll be a little fun to do with your team. But for this example, the question is, which dog are you today? And then you could put your name on one of the stickies and then move it over. I don't know about you, Scott, but I'm wondering if it's Friday already. That's where I'm at today. Some people might be watching this on the Friday and very happy, but it's Monday for me. So I'm wondering, is it Friday yet? What about you, Scott? How are you feeling today?
Absolutely. Whatever. Just go with the flow. Yeah. Focus.
Right.
Whatever. And
This
focus,
is
whatever.
Scott's confused. I think that's might be where, and there's not a confused one, but it's somewhere between whatever and focused. All right. That's fun. So you could always start with something fun like this, especially as your team gets to know each other, or maybe it's just been a while and you want to reconnect and have some fun. Not necessarily a part of it. It's something that you do really quickly. You laugh a little bit about before and after, but the main part of this is absolutely the scrum board where you may have your sprint number or your sprint name, depending. Now, I worked with a team where they named it after Game of Thrones characters for a while there. And then they would switch it to Lord of the Rings characters. So it's up to your scrum team. Then you have your sprint goal. You have to have this. This is what you're inspecting. And then you have your sprint backlog, in progress, complete, blocked. Every team has their own swim lanes. It's up to you on what the process is here. Now, the first thing that I do want to point out is these questions, which are not mandatory. So that is one technique that you can use, is answering the 3 questions, which was in the 2017 Scrum Guide, no longer in the 2020 Scrum Guide. It's always been optional. This is just to help you, guide you through, but you don't have to use this. Now, I've seen people use this, and how they've used it is with the technique round robin. So you just go around, I'll go first, I'll say what I did yesterday, what I'll do today, and if there are any blockers, and then Scott will go second. That's one strategy there. Scott, what's another strategy that people can use to facilitate their daily scrum?
Oh, those are all good points, Sanjana. I like having theme days where I have like metrics. In most organizations I work in, we have 2-week sprints. And before I started running this experiment, if you ever been right before the sprint review, you just got some things that you don't know if it's going to get done or not. So what I did at a retrospective was, hey, why don't we introduce metric Mondays? because our sprint is over on Wednesdays. So we say 2 days before the sprint is over, how about we actually deep dive and look at all the stories that we got open that's not completed and really just dissect those and identify, do a round robin. We can do that and say, hey, we actually have the developers came up with this idea. Hey, why don't we give a detailed update at our daily scrum in terms of, hey, I'm working on this. I feel like I'm going to complete this by such and such a time, such and such a date. It would definitely be done before sprint review. It definitely would not be done unless I get some help from other people. It's just deep diving into things that we don't do on a normally basis. Yeah, we always look at tracking our progress towards the sprint goal, but we just added in more metrics. We might even be looking at velocity. We might even be looking at, do we need these items? And also I'm thinking about trash Tuesdays. Okay, do we need this? No. Okay, let's trash it. Let's get rid of it if we don't need it. So it could be metrics Monday or trash Tuesday, because on Wednesday, we're going to end the sprint and we're going to start another sprint. So we have a wonderful Wednesday. Gianna.
Yeah. No, I love how different that is. Also, just that still means that we're doing this in 15 minutes. We're still inspecting our progress toward our sprint goal. The purpose doesn't change. The owners don't change. Everything stays the same. We're still in that same time box. We're just adding a little bit more, maybe some things that we overlook as a team with the themes. And maybe that's something that you even do a little separate. So you end your event and then you go into that. There's so many options with that. And I do really enjoy the idea of having those themes. I think it's really cool. Another way, which is common, but sometimes I'll notice that teams will go to round robin. They don't like it, but then they forget, why don't you just walk the board? We're going to talk about relevant things towards your progress. We're talking about, this is our task one. Maybe it's in progress. Maybe it's in complete, when we're talking about what we've done or what we've completed toward our sprint goal. Focusing on the task level, everyone should be working toward our sprint goal, and that's a whole different conversation if they're not. But what's our progress toward that? We're just going to walk the board and go over the items that are actually impacting that sprint goal. And then what you should do here is encourage team members to speak directly to the information displayed on the task board or Scrum board, which helps keep the discussion anchored to the work at hand and progress. All right, Scott, the next one.
Another idea I'm thinking about, Andriana, is rotating facilitator. We as Scrum Masters don't have to facilitate any event. We have to make sure that they happen, kept within a time box, are productive, and so forth and so on, according to the Scrum Guide. Let's say we get to a point where it may be getting stale. We may need to spruce it up. Why don't you rotate facilitators? Hey, developer, anybody want to facilitate daily Scrum tomorrow? I do. I don't. Okay, take the volunteers first. And again, that's a way to keep it fresh, keep it creative. And also, I'm thinking about servant leadership, where we can give other people a chance to put them in an uncomfortable position to up their skills, their communication skills. That's a win situation. In that way, you could help your team just grow holistically.
Yeah, I think that's also a great way to avoid it just being the lead developer, because that sometimes will happen. I asked this question to a team that I work with, like, how can we have more variety in our daily Scrum? And they actually decided in a sprint retrospective that they wanted the on-call developer to be the person that runs the daily Scrum. I thought that was very interesting. I think this is also, don't try to force things on people, ask them, get their ideas. That's a good way to come up with something different. And so the next way I think is very interesting. If you want to increase engagement and active listening, potentially do silent updates. Team members can write their updates on sticky notes, for example, a mural board here, and each team member reads out others' updates, promoting active listening and engagement. So instead of just, here's the thing that I did, now you're reading what someone else did, and you're trying to understand and hopefully asking questions if you don't understand. Developers can be truly focused on what's happening and what their progress is toward their sprint goal. All right, so those are some ways that you can facilitate and run the daily Scrum. Now let's talk about, what does a Scrum Master do when the team is struggling, or how do you support your team as a Scrum Master when you don't need to participate or facilitate the daily Scrum? Scott, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Andriana, I'm always looking at observation and feedback. I'm looking at team dynamics and providing feedback constantly. I'm looking at, is the product owner available enough for the developers to ask and get their questions answered? I'm looking at the dynamics of the developers, that when we leave sprint planning, are they all going their separate ways? If not, I'm trying to think of some creative ways where we can get each other to work together and swarm on the different events. I'm always looking at team dynamics from that perspective. If I'm not in the facilitating role, which I love because it gives me a better view of actually to see what is going on with the team and what they possibly may need to get to the next level. In some, I'm always looking for ways to improve interactions and also the meeting's effectiveness, making sure that we accomplish the goal of the meetings as identified minimum of the Scrum Guide. Andriana.
I think that goes well with also clarifying the purpose, continuously reminding the team of the purpose of the daily scrum, which should enhance their collaboration and efficiency, and not using the event as merely reporting a status. I think when developers, or even when you have a little bit of change in your scrum team, when they forget the purpose, they stop working towards that. A lot of times I'll see teams that are like, I don't want to do a daily scrum anymore. And then you go to an event and you're like, okay, you're not inspecting your progress toward your sprint goal. Nobody's really listening to each other. It's not collaborative whatsoever. It is truly operating as a status meeting. And once you can shift that, you'll bring a lot more value to the team. Scott?
I'm also thinking about facilitating healthy conflict, Andriana, and subscribers. Help the team to address and resolve conflicts that may arise during discussions of blockers or challenges. And sometimes in some environments, you just have that one person who think they know it all. Y'all ever been in an environment like that? They just know it all. Or you've been in environments where that person just always got to give their 2 cents. So how are you going to facilitate that person? Hey, in other words, we're going to tell them nicely, but really what we want to get across is, will you please shut up and give somebody else an opportunity to chime in and talk about this thing? You're not the smartest person in the room. So how are you going to do that? Thinking about the value of respect in the Scrum Guide. You're going to have the openness to call it out, but how are you going to do that in a respectful way where you facilitate healthy conflict and create an environment where other people can call that person out and say, hey, look, I got this. I got this. Thank you for your advice, but I got this. I got this. And nobody's feelings be hurt as a result of it. Andriana, what are your thoughts?
That goes great with my final point, which is encourage full participation. Encourage those quiet team members to contribute more and manage those dominant personalities to ensure that everyone's voice is heard. And I think this is really important in an event like this where you're trying to understand where everyone's at and get assistance. How do we unblock people after the event? How do we continue to collaborate and work better after the event? I think that's super important. And if people aren't engaged and people are disconnected, it will go on throughout the rest of the day. All right. We've talked about what the daily scrum is, the purpose, different facilitation techniques, and also how you as a scrum master can help your team when they're struggling, or how you can coach your team. If you like this video, you got some insights, hit subscribe. You can also join our email list. We'll be sending exclusives to those on that list. If you made it to the end of this video, that means you have an attention span greater than a goldfish.
Be legendary, everyone, but certainly not Scrum down. Have an amazing day.